I grew up on a little rocky farm in southwest Missouri, near the town of Neosho, about 40 miles from Joplin, which you may have heard of on the tornadoes. And it was a farm without running water or electricity or any of those nice things. I had this wonderful young teacher at my high school who looked like he was 15, was really 19, came to our class, my civics class in my freshman year, and sponsored a contest in oratory, which followed the rules for the, I can't think of it now. And we went to Neosho then on the American Legion, that's what it was. And then he took me to Neosho. I won in the class. He took me to Neosho, and I went up against 2 juniors and 2 seniors as a freshman, tied for second. And that was the start.
What was that like?
I don't recall any great nervousness or fear. I do recall I didn't use any gestures at that time. I just held to the platform and talked. But I did get some good ratings somehow, and I got through it okay. He said he looked for the highest IQs in the school, and I guess I qualified, I don't know. And my father did have a deep Ozark accent, but my mother did not. And I think I did not have a really deep Ozark accent at the time. My teacher, Russell Wines, whom I really respected, who did great in later life, smoothed out a few rough spots, but let me go. I wrote my own speeches. He didn't do it. He revised them for me. And I think the strength had to do with something like that. My mother was important to me in that respect. I certainly looked up to my teacher, Russell Wines. He just passed away a few years ago, but he certainly had an illustrious career in speech and debate, of which I can talk more later if you want.
Sure. Well, please, feel free.
Okay. Well, Russell coached us for, I think, 3 years, won 1 tournament, with the first one that he had ever won, and then he went on to Northwestern University, sponsored debate teams there, won 2 national titles, and then went to New York University as the head of the oral communication department there. He has written probably 8 or 10 books, and he has edited probably 60 or 70 to 100 more for Random House, and then and so he was quite a strong person. I can't believe that I had this person as my coach in my freshman year. That's almost unbelievable. At the town of Granby, which had 150 students in the high school and was a little country town. Yeah, it was at first a little bit of a challenge, because most of the young people that were debating me from the bigger places had more background than I did. Their parents were professional people. They had better vocabularies and so on. But it didn't take me about a year to catch up. I'm more articulate now than I would have been otherwise. I hope that comes through in this interview. I don't know if it is or not, but anyway, that was the help in my teaching career. And just in life in general, I'm thinking of the obituary at my brother's funeral that I simply read, and I had 2 people come up to me and said, "You have had speech training, haven't you?" And I didn't even know it showed. So it has helped me in a number of different ways. I know how to project to the back of the classroom. I know how to make eye contact with my students. And I know how to tell if a student is not getting it just by eye contact, by looking at them and seeing the expressions on their face. I had the 4 years of high school debate and 3.5 years of college speech and debate, and then 1 year as a speech teacher and another year as a speech teacher coach of debate, 2 years there. And at Ladue High School, Ladue Horton Watkins High School, I was frequently asked to judge debates, and they gave me a little gavel when I retired from there in appreciation from the help that I had given the debate team and the speech group. So that's how my involvement has been. When I applied for my first job, and I was a history major, and they wanted me to take the speech department also since I had a speech minor. That's when I decided to do it. I liked doing it very much, but I had not applied for the job to do that specific thing, since my degree was in history. I was at the school almost every evening, and I had a different philosophy from the former speech teacher. That teacher had actually cultivated a small group of highly trained people rather than spreading it out. And I just threw them in and let them swim. I entered students in all kinds of categories. We had a superintendent at a small country school that was very much for speech and debate, and he supported me in it, and we got to go to a lot of different tournaments. And when we did the county tournament, the other schools had not gone to all those different tournaments, and we swept it. We had more sweepstakes points than all the other schools put together. I had one experience that was kind of interesting. I had a little freshman girl who said, I want to enter a prose reading. I said, fine. She said, will you help me cut it? And I said, yeah, Martha, I'll get to you when I can. Never did get to her. She finally came back to me and said, Mr. Johnson, I cut it myself. Will you listen to it? I said, yeah, Martha, I'll get to you sooner or later. Never did get to her. She was the only one who went to state. Oh, I'll take it back. My one-act play also went to state, but it didn't gather honors there, and she did. Well, that one school year, I know that that several of those students did go on to use speech and debate or to become speech and debate teachers themselves. That's been the main one, since I have not been heavily involved in speech and debate since that time. I don't really know here of any special circumstances where speech and debate have helped any of my students, except, I don't know, my computer classes. I don't know whether speech and debate helped them any or not. They should make a good basis for law and for anything that pertains to public discourse. That's why I think that, that something like knowing how to identify the various arguments in a speech and knowing how to counter them and so on, I think law is probably one of the major ones that would be affected by it. Let me think. I am most proud, actually, of the feedback I've gotten from some students about how I helped them. That's been more important than that's why I filed away all my speech honors, because I'm not the type of person to put those up on the wall or something. But I didn't file away those letters that I got from students telling how I had helped them. I've got several of those, and I treasure those a lot. Makes me think, I help somebody, and they're going to go and you're going to pay it forward and now help somebody else.
Is that simple?
That's simple.
Okay.
I got one, I don't know if I have time for this, but I got one letter from a student who said, you didn't know what you did for me. I was skipping your class, hanging out in the study hall. You went down and you got me. And instead of taking me to the office and disciplining me, you sat down and said, can't we work out something? And we worked out a schedule whereby he would report to me instead of taking the test, and I would test him orally. He got a harder test orally than the others got otherwise, but he said that started me on a career. And he said, I've been in counseling and schoolwork ever since, and it turned me around. And that is my reward.
That's the paycheck, isn't it?
That's the paycheck.
That's the paycheck.
I had another one, if I have time to tell it.
Sure, of course, you have all the time.
I had a little girl in my class, a little blonde girl, in a special class, which read slow learner. And one day she jumped up and ran out of the room screaming. I sent her girlfriend down to find out what was wrong. She was in the bathroom. She said some of the boys in the class are, when you turn your back and write on the blackboard, they're muttering sexual comments and things. She said, for me, I just blow it off, but she can't handle it. I found out later from her counselor that she had been sexually abused as a child. But what I did was I sent her to the library. I said, okay, let's get you out of this classroom environment and go to the library and just work out your assignments there. And the librarian will supervise and then bring them back to me, and we'll go with that. I got a lot of complaints from the boys. I will tell you also that there was a racial element involved because the boys were black and she was white, and they accused me of racism. But I persevered anyway because it was not racism. It was just trying to get her out of the environment. A few years later, a car pulled up alongside the road, and well, I'll have to back up a little bit. She was exceptionally adept at keyboarding. That was one of her skills, and that's why I started her on that. A car pulled up. I was bicycling to school. She got out and ran over. She had been a type of student that you don't touch. That's why I figured out that she probably was sexually abused, because you touch her and she jumps back. And so I just left her alone. But she jumped out of that car and ran over and hugged me. She said, I have a wonderful job punching out buttons on a computer, and you did it. And then a little bit later I talked to a counselor, and he said, "Do you remember Ann Rotter?" And I said, "I certainly do." And he said, "You know what she's doing now?" And I said, "No." And our counselor said, "She is in charge of computer training for her company." Just from that one incident, sending her to the library and letting her work on her own. That is my reward.
Yes, yes it is.
Because no telling what would have happened to that little girl otherwise with her past.
All right.
It's the use of jargon in debate. The John Dewey principles that he set up are intended for debate analysis, not for use during debate. One's supposed to be using things like harms and that sort of thing as jargon during the debate. And that's one thing. The other thing is the speed that they're speaking at. It does not seem to accomplish anything. They go as fast as they can. And they also argue in outline, point A, point B, point C. That's not natural. We don't do that in normal life. And I think that what has happened is the debate has evolved into a game rather than into something. We were supposed to speak to the judge. We were supposed to convince that judge, as if that judge were a jury or an audience of hundreds or whatever, that our case was the correct case. And we did it using common principles. We used the same things that the John Dewey Stockow issues do, but we didn't call them that. And I've read some things online also where the average person listening to a debate probably wouldn't have any idea now what's going on. But we did. We just had to use speech and convince that judge that our case was the correct case. I think they've been to the detriment of debate, of policy debate. There are lots of other types of debate, you know, like Lincoln Douglas and some of the others that I'm very happy to see added. So that's been a plus. And also they have not been to the detriment of the non-debate things that are done, the prose readings, poetry readings, things like that. And I haven't judged any oratory recently, but I suppose it probably have not affected that so much. But they have affected that one aspect, which is known widely as policy debate. Draw a distinction. I hadn't really thought about it. I don't think in our day there was a big distinction because of the fact that we were making a speech. And, well, speech and debate, maybe so. Forensics get more into, I don't know, I always thought speech and debate were forensics.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it. I thought it was, you know, two categories of forensics. I spend more time probably at home checking my students' records and seeing, is there a weakness here? Is there something here that needs to be helped? Do I need to help this student with this particular thing? Than I do teaching in my classroom. And I will email my students if I see a weakness. If I see a problem that they're having, I'll try to get with them, say, why have you missed class so many times? Are you having a problem? Are you ill, or what's the deal? You didn't understand this concept very well. You want to come in and have me work with you on it. If you did badly on a quiz, if you can show me you understand those concepts, I'll give you half the points back. Because the main thing is learning. Testing is not as important as learning. And if they can show learning, then I will help them. And in my class, it's an introduction to computer applications, and I tell them if I hit a slow student who just really can't keep up, if you will work every day and come to class every day, and I see that you have, you know, you're more at ease with computers than you were when you came in, you've learned something, you will get nothing below a C. More technology, less note-taking. I have trouble telling my students to take notes because they sit there and listen to me. How are they going to remember it? They figure they're going to remember it in their computer or something like that. And so technology has replaced a lot of the note-taking skills that we developed. I don't think they need to take as many notes as we did because we actually took reams of notes. And in my day, it was primarily regurgitate your notes to your professor on the quiz. There was even some humor in one little definition that they put out at our school was evaluate means give the professor's opinion on the subject. And I think maybe that was true. Everything wasn't hunky-dory in those days either, but we did take a lot of notes, and I think that note-taking skill was helpful. And I see more technology-oriented today rather than trying to think, okay, I'm going to remember that. Well, they won't unless they get it down in some way. You have to be articulate, and you have to be able to analyze argument to see where this argument doesn't fit. I won one debate by just picking out inconsistencies in the opposite team. One would say another one and something else a little bit different, and it could go unnoticed, but I wrote it down, handed it to my colleague, and he hit them on it, and they lost the debate over that because of the logical inconsistencies in what they were doing. It's almost like math in a way. You need an analytical mind. You need to see cause and effect and that sort of thing. John Strecker, my colleague in college, was the best debater I've ever heard. He was not only articulate, he was smoother than I was. I was more dynamic, and he was more a smooth type debater. And he also had a very keen mind, and he was the best that I ever heard.
Did you stay in touch with him over the years?
No, I have not, and I think I heard that he had passed away. I did stay in contact with Russell Wines, my former coach, until he passed away. I'm still in contact with his lifelong friend, Ralph Smith, who was his lifelong companion, and he is in Springfield, Missouri now, and I'm in contact with him. He wants me to come visit again because I think I'm kind of a contact to Russell with him emotionally. I am in touch with some. I took 18 student trips to Europe and Asia as to educational programs. And my very first trip in 1970, some of those students, when they come to town, they will call me and we'll go out to dinner together. One's in law, the ones that come back, and he's from a legal family. Another founded 2 companies and sold them, closed them down, and retired in his 50s. Don't we wish? And the other one is with Ladue News, doing news work or some kind of public relations work for Ladue News. I'm not sure of some of the others. Probably one of the funniest things, I think I related this to you also, was when John Strecker and I walked up to a debate door and said, now who's going to speak first? We had not done any planning. And that was amusing to me. It was a little bit disconcerting also. But John had prepared one case and I had prepared another. And we hadn't had a chance to get together because he was a very busy person. I think also possibly he was a bit of a playboy. And when we walked up to the door, I said, John, we're going to decide who goes first. And he said, I'll go first and you follow. We put our debate cases together on the floor. We merged our 2 to make one case out of them, or more or less. And we won that debate. We didn't win all of them, but we did win that one. We had him off guard because they tried to hit his case. I think I told you that he had worked up a specific congressional bill, and I had just built my own case. But after his first speech, I was able to see that my case was close to that bill. So I simply said, my colleague has said that we are basing our case on this congressional bill, but we're not going to go by every provision of the bill. It's the outline of our case, and here's the case we're going to base on that bill. And I gave my case with a few adjustments made on the floor, and they had a little hard time because they'd hit my case, and John would say, well, we could put in this provision of the bill, then hit the bill, and I'd say, but I said we weren't going to go by every provision of the bill. Here's my case that answers that. They were a little bit off guard, and we just did it. I thought it was funny afterward.
Oh my!
If that had been Russell Wines, that would never have happened because he was big on practice debates, and he would have insisted that John and I had, with the other team, numerous practice debates before we went in, and we probably would have won the tournament. At the Pi Cap National Tournament in Kalamazoo, Michigan one year, and I was the only one to rate, and I took a superior in public discussion, and that was the only one that I can remember very favorably, and I think probably the highest that I attained as at the national level. I think it was 1954. My little key here doesn't say, but I could not find the record on it. But that is my Pi Kappa Delta key, and it doesn't have any dates on it. It's one of my proudest possessions. I'm sorry, did I take it?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. And I had not shown it to a lot of people, but did show it to the Jensens because I was proud of the fact that I'd been PICAP for that long, almost half of the years that PICAP's been around. It represents a skill that everybody should really have, the ability to speak in public, the ability to articulate, and so on. That's what my father particularly liked. He was always felt inferior about his own lack of education, and he said, if you can talk in public, you'll be able to do a lot of things. Seeing the changes that I have seen makes it almost impossible for me to predict future changes, because I would not have anticipated these changes had I tried to predict back then. The first change that I saw was cross-questioning in debate. They didn't have that when I was debating. And it was a great addition. That was a good one, unlike some of the ones that I have not been approving of later.
And how about Pi Kappa Delta itself? What do you think the future holds for Pi Kappa?
It's done so well in the past, I think it will continue to do very well in the future. I see no reason that things should change in that respect.